good to hear you, sir. Nice clean signal from you, and it's unusual from Harlow, because I don't normally get a lot of copies from that way, because my antenna's on the other side of the house, over. No, you're making a nice trip over this way, sir. Nice trip over here. I get talked down with QRM city all the time, but
Fred in the Shed 1664 giving you a call. Good afternoon.
1664, hello there, how are you, sir?
I'm very well. And how are you doing?
Very, very well indeed, sir. Very well indeed. It's good to hear you. Whereabouts actually are you?
I'm just outside St Albans, Hertfordshire. Roger, whereabouts is your 20?
Yeah, I'm over in Stevenage. It's Mick over in Stevenage. You were just that you're not giving me your usual signal.
Yeah, roger that. I'm just on the Elinco DX77, and that one just runs on the half power now, so my signal's probably about halfway down to what it would normally give you. But you're coming in, your very nice signal from you this afternoon, 6s and 7s, radio 5. You're spot on the meter, Roger.
Oh, right, okay, yeah, you're doing likewise. I mean, you're giving me good signal, and it sounds very, very good. So, yeah, not bad at all,
But
mate.
started this video not really planning to do a CB kind of communication video, just another chatty video, because I haven't really done one in a little while, and you seem to like the chatty videos, and to be honest, I don't mind doing them. I don't mind sitting up here sort of chatting, reminiscing a little bit about CB radio. Makes a change from going on the radio. Not really had much chance to go on the radio. It's the new year, so happy new year. First chatty video of 2020. Christmas for me gets very, very busy. Very busy at work, and really, really tired all over Christmas. I only get 2 days off for Christmas and then one for New Year's, and don't really get a lot of chance to make all that many videos, and I'm falling a little bit behind on some of the reviews. People do sort of send me things and ask me to do a review, and I feel obliged to do that. Don't mind doing that at all. So yeah, videos tend to slow down a little bit anyway this time of year. There's a few other projects that I want to sort of spend some time on, non-radio based, so regular subscribers, you just have to sort of bear with me. I've got the Grant 2 up on the desk here. That will be the next kind of video that I want to do. I want to run a Grant 2 with the dipole that I made last year, and just see how it works on legal power. I'm not expecting it to be brilliant, to be honest, but that will be a video coming up in the future. So you remember, for me personally, as I've been quite honest about it, you know, getting on CB when I was 15, 16 was about meeting people. Mostly, I will be honest, sort of young girls. I've said before, it was very easy to meet young girls, and I do know that some people left in the comments they met their future wives and girlfriends on CB. It was an easy way to meet girls, especially if you wasn't all that confident, you wasn't all that good looking, which you'll know by the last video that included me. And yeah, but it was other people as well. It was also nice when sort of, you know, when you got a little bit of experience, and I was never that experienced on setting up CB radios. I'm still not. I'm still learning, you know, now. I know a lot of you think I am, but I'm not. I'm really not. And yeah, you know, so you would get new people come on, they wouldn't have a clue about SWR, or SWR as we used to call it, or SWR. That drives people nuts. So they wouldn't have a clue about setting up an antenna. A lot of antennas were sold in those days as pre-tuned. Yeah, so basically you bought your antenna, you were told at the shop, yeah, don't worry about it, mate, it's pre-tuned for CB. What a load of bollocks, because you would come home, you know, you put it onto your sort of basic 40 channel CB radio, which didn't have a built-in SWR meter, and you know, you'd be keying up, you wouldn't have any warnings like you've got on these radios. But these people just weren't getting out very well. They were getting out half a mile, 3/4 of a mile, couldn't understand why. So what we did, me and a few other people, we get them on, you know, they'd come on, these people would come on channel, and we'd be more than happy to help them, and we'd go around their houses, as long as they didn't mind that happening, with a little SWR meter. And, you know, we'd put it onto their antennas, and normally their SWR was completely wrong. It was like 3.5, you know, sometimes off the scale, and then we would adjust the sort of antenna, normally by just sort of doing the tip of the antenna, and yeah, get their SWR down to at least below 2, 1.5, something like that, and then straight away their range increased, and also their reception probably increased a little bit as well. And that was a nice way of meeting people. I did go round a certain young lady's house to help set up her sort of CB antenna, and all the time I was there, because obviously we had to go into her bedroom, you know, it was kind of like going into like a young 16-year-old girl's bedroom, which was totally different from my bedroom that had posters of Lamborghini Countachs on the wall and sort of Ferraris. Hers was all sort of cuddly toys. And sort of, it was all kind of very feminine. Excuse me. But yeah, you know, all the time I was around her mother was just standing right sort of behind there. So yeah, get this like spotty little greasy Herbert out of my little Veronica's bedroom. Now, she didn't like me around there at all. But yeah, we did set her radio up. And talking about my sort of nemesis, I'll just get into that. Yeah, there was this young kid came on. Now, what sort of happened? CB, I say 1981, 82. A lot of the sort of early people came on to CB when the FM UK 40, the 2781, when that became legal. That's when I came on. And the first people that came on, as we've said before, you had to have a licence, and you had to register an address. You had a licence number. We took it really quite seriously. We didn't swear on air. We had a bit of a laugh, we had a bit of a crack, and we had a bit of a wind-ups and things, but we took it sort of quite seriously. We weren't interested in causing any trouble or any grief to anyone. And then as it sort of wandered on, I'm thinking sort of 82, coming into sort of 83, late 83, a lot of people, maybe mostly the girls had come on to CB, they loved the social side of it. They really did. They did, you know, the eyeballs and the all-nighters, like I've discussed before. They really did sort of keep the social side of it going. But they sort of very quickly, within about a year, you know, they looked at it. And I suppose, you know, looking back as an adult now, I can sort of see they came on, they checked out all the local action, basically all the local lads. And once they'd sort of seen all the local lads, and we weren't great. One or two of the guys probably got quite lucky. My mate Dave, like I mentioned on the last video, yeah, he probably did all right. But, you know, once the girls checked out the local action and realised that we're all pretty nerdy and, you know, spotty and all the rest of it, you know, that was it. They moved on to probably the disco and something else. So the girls started to sort of go off first. And what tended to happen was, I think CB's got handed down a generation. So whereas we were kind of 15, 16, 17, when sort of that age group sort of become discontented and moved on to other things, they were then passed down sometimes to a younger generation. These sort of boys mainly were sort of 12, 13, and that's a different sort of ballpark. You know, when you're 12, 13, you feel that you have to impress people, and maybe when you go to school, swearing is a new thing around the playground. You know, you sort of suddenly you learn a few kind of F words, even if you don't know what all of the words mean. You feel that it's impressive when your mum and dad aren't there, maybe to sort of drop some of these words. A bit like smoking, you know, everyone sort of tries it. So these sort of kids came on. And yeah, at first they were okay. They were quite sort of shy and quite nervous. And one of these kids, this guy that ended up being a pain in the arse to me, he came on the radio and, what should I call him? Going to call him Roger. That wasn't his name, but it was similar to that. So this little Roger came on, and again, you know, he sort of had a setup. His parents had sort of decided to buy him a CB, I suppose, for a birthday present. And he had one of those Amstrads, those home base, you know, the ones that were like a wedge that looked like a clock radio. Had one of those. They were still quite expensive around that time, probably about £100. I didn't think they were all that great, but they looked quite nice. It had a really big speaker, so the audio you got from them was quite respectable. But he had one of those sort of Amstrads in his bedroom, and his dad had got a GPA antenna, which pretty much was like an 18-foot alloy antenna. I think it's like the Silver Rod. I pretty much think it was like a Silver Rod, and his dad had sort of fitted that on a pole, literally just sort of put it in the ground and bolted it to the side of his garage, which was outside the boy's bedroom window, a bit close to the house, you know, literally only about 3 or 4 feet from the house. Bolted it on a pole, and it should have worked really well for him. But he came on, and he obviously was doing pretty poorly. He wasn't getting out very far, and I ended up going round there. He's only about 3/4 of a mile from me, so on my bike, and I sort of cycled round there. I wasn't driving then. And yeah, straight away I could see that his antenna, it was just too close to the wall of his house. A lot of his power was being reflected back. His SWR was sort of quite high, and he did have a built-in SWR, I think, on the Amstrad home base, and we established that was quite high, but he had no idea how to adjust it. So I ended up moving his antenna, taking the pole out of the ground, moving it about 12 foot away to the end of the garage, which sort of put it almost a third of the way down his garden. and bounced that in the ground, put the bracket on the sort of gut. We hope his dad would be okay with that. And instantly, his SWR, we got it down to about 1.3, something like that. And yeah, straight away, just with his 4 watts, he was getting out a lot better. So that was a good thing. Well, I thought it was a good thing anyway. But what quickly happened, and it sort of started because I was a little bit older, and you know, I would sort of be chatting to the girls that were still on the CB at the time. A few stayed on, and so it was like the all-nighter I was doing with that girl who, do you remember one that I told you about? She run the dad's car battery down, which got to finish that. But I was sort of chatting to her, and yeah, he was sort of, I think he was about 13 and a half, something like that by this stage. You know, he'd been on about 6 months, and he got overconfident like kids do, and basically she didn't want anything to do with him, and he would start coming on the side, and he'd be like, oh, you know, why are you talking to that loser? Why are you talking to that loser? And all the rest of it. And she made it quite plain that she wasn't interested in a young boy like him, and he sort of got quite resentful. And what he started doing was keying over me. So every time that I sort of keyed up, he would be on the side, and he would start keying over me. And that becomes sort of quite annoying. He wasn't really powerful enough to completely wipe out all of my signal, certainly to this girl that I was talking to, because we were closer. He was sort of over here. But, you know, that become annoying. And it started to become a trend. These younger sort of kids that came on the radio, they just didn't have the same feeling that we did for radio. It was just, they started to enjoy the sort of trolling, if you like. That, you know, the fact they could go on there and key over people, swear at people, wind people up to the point where people would start ranting and raving. That became what they wanted to do. And it just ruined it. It really did sort of ruin it. We didn't want this kind of sort of aggressive kind of sort of language and all of this going on. And the first ones to go were the girls, unfortunately. The girls, they thought, oh, you know, I've had enough of this anyway. So the girls all sort of literally in droves, they started not bothering. They weren't going on there sort of for abuse. And yeah, it just very, very quickly went wrong. And what happened was the guys that really wanted to stay on radio, and if I'd have stayed on radio, it's about this time I was probably learning to drive. And once I sort of got a car, then, you know, my sort of avenues expanded. I could sort of drive off and go anywhere. But yeah, the guys that wanted to stay on radio, it's about they started going over to amateur radio. And yeah, I mean, totally agree with that. And if I'd have stayed on radio, that's where I would have gone. Because obviously they'd done a little bit of sort of foundation work on sort of CB, and they went and done their ticket. And yeah, they become radio hams. They started on CB, but you know, they became sort of radio hams, and a lot of them didn't really look back once they got onto the sort of more kind of adult side of radio. And that's where CB really got the sort of the nickname children's band, you know, or the Muppets, because it was an absolute mess. And it got worse than that, because when, you know, when the swearing didn't work, and that wasn't so sort of offensive or shocking, they then started keying up playing music. You had these wannabe kind of DJs, we used to call them knob jockeys, and they would be on a 1-4 calling channel, and they'd be there all day just keying up. I don't know, they stuck a rubber band around the microphone. A lot of them had power microphones, and there was this one guy that would just start keying, and he would play AC/DC and Metallica all day on the 1-4, and it just became impossible to get a genuine contact. Yeah, you could meet other people on other channels. So yeah, that it really just went sour. It really went sour. Now the solution would, because these people were keying over us, and I say they were just kids to start with. So our solution, which wasn't really the ideal solution, but what we started doing was getting these. We started buying these linear amplifiers, these burners. And this is a Sakatagi. This is, I think, a 200 watt sideband, 100 watt. They weren't as big as that. I think the one I got, it looked like this, funny enough, but I think it was a Satagi. It was a 40 watt linear. Probably did about 30 watts. But again, by running a linear amplifier, it just gave you that little step up above the complete arseholes that were the kids that were sort of trying to ruin it for you. So for a little while, when we were running burners, yeah, we risked a little bit of TVI interference, and again that didn't help, because people were still using sort of valve tube TVs. Some of the older sort of generation, they'd stuck to their valve tube even in the 80s, and they were very, very prone to TVI, sort of electrical and radio interference. So I know a friend of mine, he was running a linear amplifier, and his neighbour, a couple of doors up, could hear him perfectly clearly on his TV. It wasn't so much the guy's station that was to blame, it was the fact that the old-fashioned tube TV was so prone to RF interference. You know, you switch it on the old TVs, if you turned a light on and off in a house, you would get a flicker and a crackle for the speaker. Well, he could hear him perfectly well. So again, CB then got a sort of a double kick in the guts, because then it became known to cause interference. And if you had a CB radio antenna up, and this kind of still is relevant today, if anyone down your road had a problem with their reception on their sort of TV, straight away, oh, it's that bloody sod with that CB radio, them bloody CB as their route. No, straight away you were blamed instantly. Even though it probably wasn't your fault, it was probably at a fault with their setup. Well, we had these little amplifiers, and that gave us a little bit of a breathing space. But then what happened was, the kids, or the really annoying kids, they got amplifiers as well. So suddenly they were running 50, sometimes 100 watt linear amplifiers, and so again it just everything just ramped up, and then again they were keying over you, bleeping over you, bleep 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 on their 901 Amstrads. And yeah, it just got stupid, because you know, you're not these were quite expensive. I don't know how they afforded it. I just don't know. I suppose birthdays, Christmases, but so yeah, that's sort of the stage where I started to pull away from it. I thought this was, you know, it was just stupid. You just couldn't go on the radio without someone coming on the side and giving you abuse, and it was just really such a shame. And then another side of it, this particular kid that I'd helped out, and he then basically he bought a mobile transceiver, like those like Harvard 40 channels, because CB radios in the shops have become so cheap, whereas when we started, I mean, a basic CB radio was probably £100, 1981 £100, you know, that's probably 300, 350, 2020. Then they sort of dropped down to a level 50, 60 quid, something like that. But in the end, they were so cheap. You know, you could pick up sort of an Alba or a cheap sort of Bush CB radio, 20, 25 pounds. I remember Comet was selling these Harvard 40 channel CB radios. They were selling them at £24.99. And yeah, I was really kind of tempted. I kind of wish that I'd got one, even if I just never used it. I'd quite like to play with it now. So yeah, these kids were getting hold of these 40 channel sort of you know, Alba and Harvard. Now again, they weren't, I mean, they reckon they were 4 watts. They probably were like 2.5, 3 watts with fresh batteries. But what they were doing then was, if they couldn't key over you with their linear amplifiers, they would then cycle round 2 or 3 of them. They wouldn't go directly outside your house. But when I was trying to talk to that girl, for example, they would put themselves right in your signal path on their bicycles, and again they'd be keying all over you. So when you tried to sort of talk to someone, they would key over you, cause interference, bleep 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 bleep. And what you could, there's nothing you could do other than sort of, you know, going outside the house, go looking for them with a bloody baseball bat. You know, there was nothing you could sort of do. It just became infuriating, and you know, I just gave up, and that's such a shame. And at the time I was really kind of upset, if you like, that the hobby had sort of come to this level, and it just left a real sour taste in so many of our mouths, and we just kind of thought, oh, you know, we sort of gave up. And that stigma of CB radios using the amplifiers, all of the abuse, all of the sort of swearing, that's still kind of, even today, people that were around that time that maybe come off CB, that's how they remember it. And I do think, I do, you know, I do know in certain areas it still goes on. I've had people comment on my videos and they've come back to CB, and in their area all they've found is that, yeah, it's a bit rough and ready, you know, on the 1.9, because we don't do the 1.4 now, but on the 1.9, yes, there's swearing and heated arguments, you know, too much of this on a Saturday night, and people start, you know, building up to a big sort of, and most of it is just talk. It doesn't generally come to anything, it's just sort of people blowing off steam. But yeah, it's based going right back to those early days, which kind of trashed the CB image. And I find it really frustrating, because obviously, you know, now on the sort of 305 group, since the sideband side of it started, which is why I sort of came back, you know, we've got a nice little group around our area. We're all old men, You know, I'm sort of in my early 50s. We're all old men. We're not interested. We can't be arsed with it. We ain't got the energy for it anymore. So yeah, we've got a nice little sort of group, and that's why the videos are so kind of important, because I know I tend to put up the same thing, the 305 group, but I think people tune into that on YouTube and they think, oh wow, this is CB kind of like I used to be. This is sort of how it used to be in 1981, 1982 when we all came on. I know we was a lot younger and all the rest of it, and yeah, that's what they're sort of looking for, and hopefully they find it. A few people have come back and said, well, I've come on to CB radio, Fred, and to be honest, all I've heard is a load of swearing, a load of abuse, which is a shame. You know, that's a shame, because obviously it hasn't sort of moved on. But in certain areas, you know, people have got their groups together. Like when I started with Steve, they've got 1 or 2 people regularly sort of meeting up on the maybe perhaps early evening on the radio, and other people have joined. And yeah, you've got these sideband groups come on. And yeah, that they've started out. So good luck to that, and I really sort of hope that continues. But as I say, that's why the CB had that really bad reputation when the kids came on, and the worst thing was that a lot of these kids that came on when they were 12, 13, you know, they were still at this in my area when they were probably 16, 17. They got so much of a kick out of being abusive and winding people up that they, with the sort of testosterone of sort of the teenage years, they never grew out of it. And a few times, you know, once I'd left CB for a year, and I'd become very sort of nostalgic about it, and I'd just wire up because I still have I had an antenna in the loft at my parents' place, and I'd just wire up my CB, and it was very, very sort of quiet. But what I did hear on there, again, was quite abusive. And so there you go. You know, what a shame. Tell me what you think in your area. Was it? I'm sure that happened pretty much all around. If you was on back in the glory days of sort of CB, it might still be happening now. Tell me. You know, if you come back onto CB, is it still a little bit toxic? Is it still a little bit abusive? That's a shame if that's the case. And yeah, maybe you was on CB and you went on to the amateur side, and maybe you've just sort of slipped back onto the CB side, you know, because it's a little bit more easy, a little bit more relaxed, and yeah, maybe that's what you've done. Okay, look, I've waffled on probably too long. Happy New Year. And he said Merry Christmas. Happy New Year to you all. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching this. As I say, going to be a few more CB Radios videos coming up in 2020. But yeah, as for now, for me and the guys on the 305, please stay safe, look after yourselves. Thanks for watching the videos, and cheers, and I'll catch you on the next one.